We start this hour with massive news out of college football, where Alabama coach Nick Saban is retiring. That is according to multiple reports. Saban won 6 national titles in 17 seasons in Tuscaloosa, closing the books on one of the most successful runs in college football history, including his 03 title at LSU. Saban's 7 championships are the most all time. And for more on Saban's decision, here's CBS Sports senior college football writer Dennis Dodd.
It's not a bombshell. It was time for Nick Saban. That's not me saying that. That's the man himself. I talked to him a few years ago, and he confided to me privately, can you imagine this place if I go 8-4? That's not a bad record for anyone, but it wasn't a championship. And he did not want to be that guy to be there at Alabama when things declined. The man who set the record, this is Joe DiMaggio's 56-game hitting streak, probably never be broken in this age of the playoffs. 7 national championships, 6 at Alabama, 1 at LSU, is stepping down. One of the greats of the game is now out of the game.
Thank you so much, Dennis. Nick Saban's career spanned 28 years. In addition to those 7 national titles, Saban has won 12 conference titles, 11 in the SEC, and 1 in the MAC. Incredibly, he never had a losing season, and 292 wins in total, 4th most by a head coach in Division I history. All right, time to welcome in CBS Sports college football writer Barrett, Sallee, and CBS NFL analyst Charles Davis to weigh in on this shocking news about one of the greatest football coaches we've ever seen in the sport. First, Barrett, I'll ask you first. What was your reaction when you saw the news come down?
You know, I wasn't as surprised as I thought I would be, because looking back at that Rose Bowl and really what Nick Saban has said throughout the course of the season, he was really proud of this team. And I think a lot of coaches, you know, maybe don't view things by national championships. Fans do, but I think a lot of coaches view this as, you know, what's the team that I want to ride off into the sunset with? And I think he was extremely proud of this team from where they were at the beginning of the season, which was in a very, very bad place, to a team that was, you know, 1 overtime play away from perhaps beating the eventual national champion in a national semifinal. So, you know, I think we all sort of thought, you know, out from the outside, yeah, he's going to win a national title right off in the sunset, whatever. But I think for Saban, because he does preach everything, winning the hour, winning the day, winning the minute, winning the next play, that you look at how this team did that throughout the course of the season, and I guess it makes sense that he would leave on, I think, a note that maybe not a lot of us expected.
Yeah, and Barrett, I like what you said there about coaches and the teams that they're coaching and how they feel about them, because if it's okay with you, I want to continue in that theme, because this squad, at one point, they played a game in Tampa, Florida against the University of South Florida, USF. And if I'm not mistaken, they used 2 quarterbacks that night, no Jalen Milroe, who had been benched, and came out of that, realized they had to go back to Milroe and figure out how they were going to fashion offense and go the rest of the year. And they looked extremely vulnerable. They looked like a team that was going to struggle. And if you wanted to come get Alabama, it certainly looked like the time to go get them. Instead, they win another SEC championship, upset Georgia, knocked them out of the college football playoff. With a quarterbacking situation, maybe wasn't ideal. So the point you made about coaches and how they feel about their teams and what they like, I think it's not just the team, Barrett. I think how he coached this season, how his staff responded this season. He's got a lot of pride in how they went out and did things this year, as opposed to being the mighty overdog as they usually are in most.
Yeah, I mean, from where they started, as you guys both alluded to, beginning of the year, to them being 1 or 2 plays away from making it to the college football national championship. This is one of his greatest coaching seasons in history, right? Specifically for him. Now, when we talk about greatest coaches of all time in college football, you think about, you know, Woody Hayes, Bear Bryant, Bobby Bowden, the list goes on and on, Joe Paterno. Where does Nick Saban rank, Bear, in terms of the all-time great college football head coaches?
Yeah, he's the greatest of all time, because think about what he's done in this era. This is a much different era than it was during Paul Bear Bryant's era, Woody Hayes, or whoever. This is an era of 85 scholarship limits, recruiting budgets that are off the wall for every single school, the players coming from everywhere that where you have to recruit nationally. This is not like Bear Bryant's era, where you can basically just recruit everybody, get the best roster, get the deepest roster, and win national championships. Alabama did that when everybody else was jumping at them. It was like they were the biggest shark in the shark tank. And so to do this and sustain success in this era is almost impossible. And then you throw in the fact that he's re-recruiting his roster almost every single season because they are good players. They could go elsewhere. But you also had him convincing players to sit 3 years to get 1 year and go on to the NFL. He sent a record 44 players to the first round of the NFL draft at Alabama, 49 overall. So we can talk about how you want to gauge best college football coach of all time. I don't think there's any doubt. However you want to define it, it still lands on Nick Saban.
And Barrett, just think of what he had to do on his own campus to convince people he was the best coach of all time.
Yeah, right.
Because if Barrett, I know, has been there. Chris, I'm not sure you've been to Tuscaloosa for a game, but in pregame for home games, they play Bear Bryant talking.
Yep.
And the crowd responds like you would not believe, like the Bears going to walk back out there again. So just the idea, because when he first got there, well, we got ourselves a good football coach. No, he ain't Coach Bryant. Well, he's a good football coach. And now he's walking away, statue, greatest coach of all time, and that whole pantheon. And one other thing, the ability to change and adapt with times that Barrett was talking about. There was one bump there, Barrett, you remember when he got upset about how fast the game was being played? And he was like, that's not football, and this fast break football, and it's causing too many things. And the very next year, who was running spread
exactly
faster than anyone? Nick Saban. Okay, I can't beat him, so I'm going to beat them their way. So this is almost like Phillips. He can, Bear Bryant, he can take urine and beat his, and take his and beat urine. So that's just how it goes. He can take any roster and get it done, and he has throughout his time frame.
And
think about this, Charles. Think about this, too. The last few years, he gave the keys to his quarterbacks.
Yep.
Like, more than he should have. And he even admitted that. It's like 15 years ago when Mark Ingram was there and Eddie Lacy and Trent Richardson. You're going to say that the quarterback's going to drive the bus at Alabama under Nick Saban? You'd be called crazy.
Hey, if we called Greg McElroy right now and said, hey, Greg, how many options for checks did you have when you were there? He'd look at us like we were aliens. No. And instead, this is what we have. That the quarterbacks then, don't lose it for me. And now you play through the quarterback like almost everyone else. Let's just give the man credit for all that. I first met him calling games of his at LSU. And watched him, move that program. Remember, he left Michigan State on a 9-2 season and made them relevant again. We've noted it, Chris. Everywhere he goes, he wins. And let's face it, he's riding off into the sunset. Still a winner, taking Michigan to the limit. Heck, they were up. Remember, they were up 4 with ball. And if they kicked, and then had to kick that field goal, and that's what killed them because Michigan was able to come back and get them. Michigan, unquestionably, the best team in college football this year. They proved it. But Alabama, with a sketchy offense, took them to the limit in that game. And I think Barrett made a great point about how proud he is of this squad.
As he should be, right? Because they beat Auburn in his last season on that 4th and 31. And then, of course, they take down the undefeated Georgia Bulldogs, who had not been beaten in 2 seasons. So, yeah, you got to give all the credit to him and his players. Now, we have to turn the page, though, right? Because as great as Saban is, there's still a Bama football program that has to have a head coach. And quickly, I might add. So, Barrett, what are some potential candidates in your eyes, what you're hearing, in terms of who might replace Saban and whether you think there could be a stopgap coach and then somebody else after that?
Well, like Bobby Bowden said, you never want to be the guy that follows the man. You want to be the guy that follows the guy that followed the man. But I don't think that's going to be the case in this one. I mean, I think, there are going to be coaches everywhere. The name that jumps out to everybody, and I think it's no shock, is Oregon's Dan Lanning. He's been there. He's been at Georgia. He understands what it's like to recruit in the SEC. He understands what it's like to build from the inside out, which you have to do to be a national championship caliber team. We saw that with Michigan a couple nights ago. So I think Dan Lanning will be there. Dabo Swinney, for 10 years was always like, well, Dabo's the heir apparent, but I don't know. The shine's kind of worn off Dabo a little bit. I don't know if that would scare Alabama's administrators away from him, or maybe I think the other side of that argument is convince Dabo that, you know what, maybe we'll go to Alabama because the house I built here in Clemson is springing a few leaks, and I don't want to fix them. So I think he would be in that mix as well. Here's a curveball that I don't think a lot of people have mentioned. How about DeMeco Ryans? He's doing a really good job at the NFL, an Alabama player, a young guy, can recruit at an elite level, you would think, based on the connections he has at the pros and at the college level. I wouldn't be surprised if you see his name thrown around a little bit.
Barrett, that's a heck of a breaking ball right there. That's a 3-2 on the
12-6, baby.
Right.
I mean, just 12-6. You know, they used to call it in baseball parlance, that's an Uncle Charlie. What you just put was a Lord Charles. Okay, that's how good a pitch you just threw right there. So bottom line is all those names on the list make sense for all those reasons. The Dabo one is the one that I'm really locked in on because maybe if he might feel like it's time to try a new legacy. But here's the question he would have to answer. Is he willing to make those kind of moves and changes we talked about that Coach Saban did? Because Dabo's still railing about transfer portal and what's going on here and there. You're not going to survive unless you make those changes. That's what you're going to have to do in order to keep up with the times there at Alabama. So that would be a question I'm sure the Alabama administration would have for him. The other part is whoever becomes that coach, that recruiting class has to be rescued. You've got to have them in there. And can they still operate with the same intensity that you have there? Because if you ask people who watch them practice, watch them work, watch them do what they do, a lot of times it's described as 4th and goal every day at Alabama. That's how you get after it, and that's how they come into it. So I'm eager to watch it. I'm eager to see. And Barrett, the best part is I threw on a red tie today in honor of Coach Saban since he's retired. Our friend Chris, he jumped all of us. He threw on Coach Saban's jacket. I love it.
And inside knowledge. Could have broke the news right here, Chris. Come on.
I knew it the whole time. I was just waiting for Saban to drop it, right? Because I had him on the phone call.
You waiting for us to read the tea leaves because you had the jacket on.
That's right. You already know, baby. You already know. Now, speaking of the recruiting classes, Charles and Barrett, and, of course, his current roster, what does Saban's retirement mean for how they're going to make sure that these current players stay? And then what happens with the rest of the recruiting classes, Barrett?
Well, you've already seen one guy decommit, a 5-star wide receiver. So things are going to happen quickly. I think obviously now Alabama players can transfer within a 30-day window because they lose their head coach. Well, it's not official yet, but, you know, whenever that does become official. So you're going to have a really hard – I mean, there are – you know that scene in an airplane in the flight air control tower where the guy has like 4 phones on his ear? That's like every single SEC coach right now trying to talk to Alabama commits, Alabama signees, Alabama players. I mean, this is going to be a feeding frenzy. And these players and these coaches that are still on Alabama staff, I don't know how you deal with this in this day and age. There's no blueprint for what's happening right now at every single player's house that is even associated with the University of Alabama. So it's going to be very, very hard. I would not be surprised if you see a lot of guys enter the, well, you know, they can't enter the portal now, but maybe say they're going to enter the portal and not necessarily go into it officially, just to see where the offers might come in nowadays, because that is a new thing. So it's going to be wild the next couple of days, couple of weeks.
Barrett, they're not just ringing the phone, they're texting while they're ringing, and they're also flying and winging their way to be in the vicinity of all that. The old bump in where we just ran into guys at just by chance is probably about to take place everywhere. You name it. But the flip side is Alabama understands what they're doing and what they're up against. So everyone who's on the payroll right now that's an assistant coach that's recruited these kids, they're working the phones the same way. Hey, just hang in there. Don't make a decision yet. Wait till we announce our new head coach. Don't even think about going anywhere. You're still wanted here at Alabama. So it's really a pull and a tug, right? Both sides coming at these kids, both sides sending their message out. It'd be very interesting to see which message gets received. Alabama's one of those few places, I think, Barrett, that doesn't automatically get gutted by Nick Saban going, because it's still Alabama. They still play for championships. They still win big, and it is the biggest thing going in that state and always will be. If those kids just hold on and wait, find out what's going on, they might very well salvage that, or they go into the transfer portal and get kids from other places. That's just the way it works nowadays.
You know what that means? The coaching staff is not going to be sleeping whatsoever for the next
better
couple
not
days,
be.
couple weeks. Now,
There's
Saban,
nobody
though,
sleeping.
Saban is going to be enjoying his sleep. He's going to catch up on all the sleep he's lost for all the years, the decades that he's been coaching in college football. Barrett, Sallee, Charles Davis, we appreciate y'all. And the whole world is appreciating what Nick Saban has meant to college football. You see Deion Sanders, head coach of the Colorado football team, saying, wow, college football just lost the GOAT to retirement. I knew it would happen one day soon, but not this soon. The game has changed so much that it chased the GOAT away. College football, let's hold up our mirrors and say honestly what you see. Then how about Sark, right? Of course, there's history there with Saban and Pete Carroll, who's out as head coach, as the Seahawks said. The two GOATs would not be where I am today without these two men as mentors. Thank you for everything. And then how about Mark Ingram, the second former Alabama star, saying, Coach Saban is the GOAT. Thanks for believing in a young man from Flint, Michigan. Helped me become a champion on the field, but more importantly, a champion in life. Enjoy retirement, Coach. You earned that. Love you, Coach Saban. Roll Tide.